Indiana. I'm just curious, is anybody else here from the Midwest? All right, I just left Indiana on Monday to drive back home after visiting family. It was 19 degrees when I left. Thank God for Bluffton, South Carolina, is all I have to say. When we moved from Indiana down here to Bluffton, we noticed pretty quickly that there were some significant differences between Indiana and South Carolina. Indiana, I let my dog out in the backyard, and I worry about the street in the back here. I worry about alligators. That was a new thing for me. In fact, when I went home to Indiana this week, my mom has a pond in her backyard. And I don't know about any of you, but every time I leave here, no matter where I am, I look for alligators everywhere I go. Does anybody else do that? Is that just me? Okay. Moving from Indiana to Bluffton. In Indiana, you're surrounded by cornfields. Here it's golf courses, so it's an upgrade. In Indiana, they play football on Sundays. Here, not so much. It's always on Saturdays. When I first moved, somebody asked me if I was a Yankee or if I was a damn Yankee. And I asked them what the difference was, and they said a Yankee brings a suitcase, and a damn Yankee brings a U-Haul. I said, welcome to the South. That's good to know. A lot of differences between Indiana and South Carolina. I think the biggest difference that I've noticed is in Indiana, we would sit and eat. And in Bluffton, we squat and gobble, which is very different. I had not anticipated that. I think when we moved down in 2008. I don't know if anybody remembers how fun 2008 was. We moved here in August of 2008, and the economy and the markets crashed in October of 2008. One thing that was very interesting to me when we moved down here was that it seems to me like everybody who is here is from somewhere not here. I was just asking over at this table, I'm just curious, how many of you were born and raised in Bluffton? 2. All right. How many of you have moved here, let's say in the last 15 years? Just look around the room, just keep your hands up for a minute, and see how many new faces there are in the last decade here in Bluffton. Everybody that lives here seems to be from somewhere else. Community is of value, and it's not the easiest thing to find when everybody is from somewhere else. When I grew up in Indiana, there were 3 places that I found community. I found community in my church. I grew up as a church rat. I was always there. I found community on the basketball courts in Indiana, because that's what you do when you live in Indiana. And I found community in theater and performing, and love to do that. Now, church will always be a part of my life. Faith will always be a part of my life. I hope I always find community there. The basketball courts, there comes a moment in every young man's life where they realize they're not going to be the next Michael Jordan, or in my case, the next Larry Bird. And for me, that was in September when I turned 49. I knew it was over for me. It wasn't going to happen. But I love theater. I've always loved theater. I've always loved the arts. I've played piano, and I've sung, and I've sang in choirs, and I've been in companies, and I've been in casts, and I've been an actor, and I've been a producer, and I've been a director. I love the power of story. I love that story brings people together. I love that music brings people together. I wear a lot of different hats. I'm the father to a 28-year-old daughter. I'm the father to a 22-year-old daughter. I'm the father to a 17-year-old daughter. And I would say double up on the flask in Disney World. I have the privilege of being the pastor of a small church here. It's called Live Oak Christian Church. We meet just around the corner at Bluffton School Dance. And I have the privilege of being the executive director of the Live Oak Performing Arts Center. Did you know that the town of Bluffton has been identified by the South Carolina Arts Commission as a cultural arts district? Did anybody know that? Yeah, a cultural arts district. I believe there are 8 throughout the state of South Carolina. A cultural arts district is a location in the state of South Carolina where culture and arts thrive in order to help build community. And nobody in the Rotary Club outside of me and one other person knew that that was even a thing in Bluffton, South Carolina. I've always loved the arts. I've loved the fact that, and I think of all the seats I've sat in as in theater and in arts, is the chair of director, because I watch people from different backgrounds and experiences and ages and talents and abilities come together, even if they have disagreements about any number of life issues. But when they come together to do a performance, to put on a show around a story that unites other people, they're all in. Whether it's makeup, or whether it is it's set design, or it's acting, or it's singing, or it's directing, or it's playing, everybody comes together to unite everybody else around them around a story that will either inspire or challenge, that will cause laughter or tears. There's a lot of power in coming together around arts and culture. And so I want to take a few minutes today just to introduce you to the Live Oak Performing Arts Center. The LOPAC, as we call it. About 10 years ago, my passions of theater and the church that I was a part of kind of united. We're trying to figure out how to build a building for our church. And we began to ask the question, how could we build something that the community would actually thrive in? That the community could use? We have community spaces that invite unity all over the place. We have soccer pitches, and we have golf courses, and we have Old Town, and we have the farmers market, and we have events that happen down on Calhoun Street. We have the distillery. If anybody's ever been in the distillery, it's beautiful. They have a great old fashioned there, and I love to see people come together in different venues. We have sporting venues, we have some entertainment venues, but we don't have one place in the middle of a cultural arts district that specifically exists to bring people together around culture and arts. It doesn't exist in Old Town. It doesn't exist in Bluffton. You'd be hard-pressed to find a venue that seats 400 people for any event. That being its purpose, to bring people together. Whether that's around public speaking, or conferences, or leadership seminars, or theater, or concerts and music, that space does not exist in a cultural arts district designed to bring people together around culture and arts. It's not here in Bluffton. And so about 10 years ago, this group began to think, well, what could we do to build this space? We started with a picture, and James Atkins from Court Atkins loves when I show this picture in public. We bought some property over in front of the post office on State Street, right off of that paved street, State Street. There's a lot of construction happening over there. We purchased the property along one of the stretches in State Street. We began to ask, if we were to build a building that the community could use, a performing arts space, what would it look like? And so I called James, who's a friend, and I said, I need you to just sketch something out, give me some kind of capacity number. And this is what we came up with on the property. This was the first vision for the Live Oak Performing Arts Center. What's interesting to me about a cultural arts center, a cultural arts district, a performing arts center, is that the whole idea is that it brings people together. It's all about community. The last 18 months, I know, have been a real treat for all of us in the room. Right before the pandemic hit, my daughters and my wife and I had the opportunity to drive down to Jacksonville to see a show. We went to see Wicked from the Broadway shows touring around. And it struck me during the pandemic, as I look back on that moment with our family, there is a power to story and arts that is both communal and deeply personal. It's deeply personal in that when I go to a show, a concert, when I go to a theater, when I'm around a great story, what's powerful to me personally is that it can transport me. I can shut off all reality. I get lost in the music. I get lost in the sets. I get lost in the performances. I mean, I can be transported like that. And for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, with everybody else in the room, there's this personal engagement that happens on the stage. But here's the communal part about it. We all have those people that we go to see shows with or movies with. I don't know if you have anybody like this in your family, But in my family, I have one, and if I'm sitting next to them, and if they've seen the show that I'm watching, it could be a movie on a screen, it could be the latest Spider-Man or Marvel movie, it could be a show, it could be, but this person, no matter what happens, when something happens on the screen, they want to watch my experience with it. Does anybody have that person? And so while you're engaged in the story, they're just kind of looking at you like, because they just want to see what you're doing. There's that communal idea, right? I'll never forget looking down the row and seeing my girls lost in the story of Wicked. Or that moment when my wife and I are sitting at a concert and a song comes on that's kind of one of our songs from 25 years of marriage. And she taps my leg or I squeeze her hand. There's something really powerful that brings people together around culture and arts. And it seems incongruent to me that in the middle of Bluffton, South Carolina, a cultural arts district, we don't have a place for that to happen. Easier for me to cast the vision about the purpose and value of a performing arts center. Better yet, for me just to show you. So here's a 3D rendering of what the Performing Arts Center will look like once it's constructed. We'll play the music. It's just background music if you can hear it great, but here's the Live Oak Performing Arts Center. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea of what we're up to. The Live Oak Performing Arts Center is going to be an 18,000 square foot, 400 seat auditorium, theatrical performance stage, vertical fly space, which means the fly space or the sets for productions that come through town can rise up to the ceiling as opposed to having to be stored on the platform. State-of-the-art audio video lighting with online broadcast possibilities, green rooms, costume makeup areas, rehearsal space. There's going to be an art gallery along the side hallway that will display artwork for local artists to the outside of the building. I mentioned earlier that I'm the pastor of church, and this is where a lot of the questions come from. So this church is building this building, and the answer to that is yes. One of our core values as a church is reckless generosity, and we believe that it's important for us to build something for our community. We're not building a church building and asking the theater groups and the arts to come into our space. We're building a performing arts center that the church gets to meet in on Sunday mornings. It's truly a gift to our community. We have partnered with groups like Main Stage Community Theater, the local community theater that has been on the island for over 20 years under the name Main Street Youth Theater, has moved to Bluffton as Main Stage Community Theater. This will be their home for at least 3 to 4 performances a year. We're working with the Evolution Big Band. One of my favorite aspects of working with Jeff Shaw and the Evolution Big Band is that they are a nonprofit band who positions themselves as fundraisers for other nonprofit organizations. In other words, they receive not a penny from any concert they do. They donate all of their profits back to the nonprofit organizations that they raise money for. And they need a place for those nonprofits to come for their fundraisers. And the Live Oak Performing Arts Center will be the home for those events. We're in discussions with area concert promoters for speakers and music acts. We've talked to Billy Watterson over at the distillery. We've talked to Josh Cook over at the roasting room about how to work together to build musical acts, to build theater acts, to bring in public speaking events and training opportunities, all to be done at the Live Oak Performing Arts Center over on State Street. Just to give you a glimpse of who we are and what we're doing. Some people have begun to ask, okay, well, where are we in the process? We own the land, we own it outright. We're in the process of building the organizational structure. The LOPAC is a 501c3. It's separate from the church completely and entirely. Actually, at Bluffton Village, we already have Architectural Review Board approval of all of the entire project. It's in the final permitting with the town. We've got best and final pricing. We're basically ready to build as soon as the finances are in place to do that. Which leads to the next question that always comes up in every conversation, which is how much is it going to cost? It's a $6.5 million project. $6.5 million project. That does not include anything that's been invested today. Live Oak Christian Church has invested almost all of the money up front at over $600,000. They've committed an additional $1 million in cash, plus the church will finance $2.5 million of the building to ensure that it happens. Main Stage Community Theater has already invested $1 million with us to ensure 20 years of shows in our space they do not have a home, so this will be their home for the next 20 years. And then we're in the process of entering out into the public as a fundraising goal to see the reality of this. To help move us from paper to reality, we'll take some help from public funds. So I'm just going to put this up here and leave it here for more information. You can visit us at lopacsc.org. You can reach out to me at info@lopacsc.org. Any questions that you have, if you want to reach out to me personally, we've got naming rights available. We got all kinds of different options for different business partners in the community, folks that want to get involved, that want to help out, that want to donate. You're welcome to do that. I'm here today basically to cast a vision for you, to let you know that this project is even on the books. We had hoped to break ground this past fall. That was the initial plan. Just to give you a little bit of an insight into the luck that I have, I moved down here in 2008 and the economy collapsed. Our church needed to move out of Bluffton High School where we met, and so we had scheduled to move to the Bluffton School of Dance in 2015. The Sunday that we were supposed to move, Hurricane Matthew came through and knocked out all of our plans. This is just the luck that I have. We did a fundraising campaign to the church to raise $1.2 million just from the church members to make this a possibility. Today we've raised over $700,000 of those dollars. The additional $500,000 will come in over the next year and a half. Anybody want to guess on the Sunday that we committed that money? It was the Sunday right before COVID hit and shut everything down for the next 12 months. It's just my luck. It's the way it goes. Our goal was to break ground this past fall, but COVID kind of threw that under the bus, and so we're now moving our timeline down. We've moved forward with all of the construction plans. We've moved forward with all of the approvals. Now it's just up to the generosity of the church. It's up to the generosity of the theater community, and it's up to the generosity of the people of Bluffton and the greater area to help us see this become a reality. So, I will answer any questions that you have. If you have any questions today, I'd be glad to talk about this and stick around afterwards if you'd like. But I'll open up the floor. Does anybody want to know anything about the LOPAC and what I can do to answer the questions you have today? Yes?
How many people are in your church?
You want a real count or do you want a pastor's count? Pastors tend to inflate things a little bit. On any given Sunday, I'll put it this way, if everybody in our church showed up at the same time for the same service on the same Sunday, we have about 400 folks in our church. What other questions do you have? Yes, sir.
What level of contribution do you need to get to in order to commence construction?
What level of contribution do we need to get to construction? That's a fantastic question. A lot of this for us depends on our ability to finance. So we can finance about $2.5 million of the project. We have about $1 million and $1 million to 1.3 in the bank right now. Our goal would be a $3 million raise in the community in order for us to break ground. We can finance the other 2.5. So if we are able to see about $4 million in our accounts through donations or through commitments, the banks will honor those for us to go ahead and break ground. Essentially about $2.5 million. We're about $2.5 million away from being able to break ground. What other questions do you have? Yes?
The Live Oaks Performing Arts Center,
Yeah.
do you have a community that already does any programming, or is there any programs out there for youth that you are doing, or is this just a place where others will come and do their programs?
So it's going to be a little bit of both. That's a fantastic question. From a programming standpoint, the church is a tenant of the space. Main Stage Community Theater is a tenant of the space. The Evolution Big Band is a tenant of the space. In addition to that, once the LOPAC is constructed, the LOPAC as an organization, as its own 501c, will begin offering shows and will do theater camps in conjunction with Main Stage Community Theater. So there will be offerings from us as an organization to the community, as well as a venue for outside folks to come in and use the space as well.
Currently, you don't have.
Currently, we don't, because we don't have a space to do it. Right, yeah. We are definitely in a, do you buy the car before you get the driver's license? Do you get the driver's license before you buy the car kind of situation? So we are planning as if we have space, even though we don't have space. What other questions can I answer for you? I'll answer I know one of the big questions that we get. Steve has been a part of this conversation with me before through the chamber, through the Hilton Head Bluffton Chamber, and that is, how are we separating church from performing arts space? And the answer to that is, the LOPAC is a separate 501c3 altogether from the church. So the church owns the property and owns the building, but it is bringing on the LOPAC as its managing organization. In other words, the 501c3 that is the LOPAC is a non-member organization. The church is not a member. The church doesn't get a vote in what happens at the LOPAC. The LOPAC board is the board that controls all of the events inside of the space. That is to say, the church does not have control over shows that happen. If Main Stage Community Theater wants to bring a show in, the church could not stand up and say, you can't bring that into our space. By the same token, the church does have seats on the board, so there is influence into the LOPAC as an organization, as does Main Stage Community Theater, and there are also seats on the LOPAC board that are open to the community as well. And so it is it's a relationship. It is not an authority structure from the church to the LOPAC. They will operate as two separate entities. When folks give to the LOPAC, it is ensured that all monies given to the LOPAC specifically reside with the Performing Arts Center. In other words, not one penny moves over from the LOPAC to the church. There's an absolute legal firewall on financial contributions between the two organizations. So that answers any questions there. Any other questions that you have? Yes, sir.
The center can be used for, if somebody wants to have an event, they want to rent the space.
Correct.
Yeah.
It is entirely open to the community for public use. If a business wants to use it for a conference, they can call us, they can rent the space. If a family wants to host a massive family event, they can call us, they can rent the space. Dance theaters, a lot of the dance troupes around the area and some of the other theater groups have already begun to ask us when we're going to start scheduling, because they want to do recitals, they want to do their spring productions in there. So yes, it will be open. And the LOPAC board will be the board that determines facility usage and scheduling as well. Any other questions?
What's the biggest challenge for theaters these days?
The biggest challenge for a theater these days, right now, it's staying open. It's trying to manage how you put that many people in a space and do it safely in a COVID environment. Aside from that, almost every other theater has one significant struggle, and it's money. It's always money. So the beauty for this and the Main Stage Community Theater arrangement is They are paying $1 million up front for 20 years of space. There is zero overhead for them as a theater. The church assumes, the LOPAC assumes all overhead costs. So all Main Stage Community Theater has to do is come in and do shows. They don't have to worry about paying for rent, they've already done it. They don't have to worry about heating or air, they don't have to worry about maintenance on the facility. That's all done by the church or by the Performing Arts Center. So it's a win-win for their organization because they get to come in and do what they're built to do, which is perform and tell stories. And it's a win for the church aspect of things because we're providing a space to the community for them to use to be able to do what the community needs to do. And they get a home out of it on Sunday night. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to leave this up on the screen. Again, this is our website. You can find out a ton of information there. If you want to reach out to me personally, that's my email address. And I would love to meet, to have any conversations that anyone has. I'll take a meal or I'll take an appointment for just about anything, anywhere, for anyone who has any questions about what's going on at the LOPAC.